reeled and burst into flames. The 2 people on board would not have survived the impact. Wreckage was scattered over a wide area. This tragedy could have been so much worse. Fortunately, the wreckage has landed in the corner of this field. 400 yards away to my right is the southbound carriageway of the M6. A rotor blade from the aircraft landed on the hard shoulder, but miraculously it missed passing motorists. And a few hundred yards away on the other side of the crash site is a housing estate.
The helicopter has come down in a field just yards from the M6 motorway, and I dread to think of the consequences if had it landed on the carriageway. And it's come down about 150 yards from a housing estate. So a very tragic accident, but in a sense fortunate that it could have been worse.
An investigation into the cause of the crash is beginning tonight. Eyewitnesses say the rotor blade seemed to snap before the impact.
We saw this helicopter in the sky and it seemed to be doing erratic movements, and then we actually saw the rotor blade break up in the air, they'd thrown about, and it just plummeted to the ground.
And the numerous motorists who passed this spot earlier today will have little idea of just how close they came to being caught up in this horrific crash. Ben McCarthy, News at 10, Lancashire.
9 British tourists were among 28 people injured today when a pleasure boat hit a bridge on the River Seine in Paris. It crashed into an arch of the historic Pont Neuf bridge in the centre of the city. The boat, one of the popular Bateau Mouche, went out of control after a fault developed in the navigation equipment. Nearly 200 passengers who should have flown to Sicily yesterday morning are still at Gatwick Airport tonight, though they should be taking off in the next 2 hours. They were involved in a furious row with the small charter airline Sabre after they complained about an initial delay and a change to their flight plan. Lauren Taylor reports from Gatwick.
Hoping tonight for a smooth flight, the passengers were checking in for a second time, more than 40 hours after they were due to leave. Sabre Airways refused to carry them on Sunday when some passengers got angry after a delay and a change of destination for the flight. One man was arrested after refusing to leave the plane. Flight SBE 140 was originally due to take off at 7:25 on Sunday morning, but the passengers didn't get on board until 10:15. After the trouble developed, police escorted the crew off the plane for their own safety at 10:55. The passengers were then also removed, and the plane left without them at 11:53. The passengers' rescheduled flight is now due to leave Gatwick at midnight tonight.
He decided he wouldn't take any of the passengers because he couldn't identify which passengers were the troublemakers and which weren't the troublemakers. And at the end of the day, the captain has got the total command of the aeroplane. He's got total consideration to make towards his passengers, towards his crew and towards the aeroplane.
The passengers were told to make their own arrangements, either to stay near Gatwick or to return for tonight's flight. Sabre is offering no compensation because it says the passengers' riotous behaviour was to blame. But some of its customers argue that the airline has exaggerated what happened and that they should be compensated.
The last night we have to sleep here.
I'm very tired at the moment, very angry with the company because it's illegal.
When the flight eventually does take off, the saga won't end. 150 of the passengers are threatening legal action against the airline. Lauren Taylor, News at 10, Gatwick Airport.
The University Admissions Service is bracing itself for an unprecedented scramble for places when A-level results come out on Thursday. Thousands of students who'd planned to take a gap year out of education are now expected to try to get into college this autumn to avoid the £1,000 a year tuition charges the government's introducing in a year's time. Here's our political correspondent Jackie Ashley.
Cradley Printworks in the West Midlands. One young student, Adrian Dodd, had planned to spend next year working here to gain experience before going to study engineering at university. But he's pulled out, going straight to university this autumn to avoid paying tuition fees next year.
It would have been a major factor in my career. I felt it would have contributed me considerably towards my employment after university and would have helped me increase my capabilities as an engineer.
Adrian stood to lose several £1,000s by delaying his university place. His would-be employers regret the late news of tuition fees next year.
We are disappointed with the lateness of the government's change of policy at a crucial time when the A-level results are due to be announced this week and the people are planning their future.
Good afternoon, Newcastle Inquiries.
The Universities and Colleges Admissions Service has received nearly 2,000 calls today alone from students trying to find a last-minute college place this year. The government has signalled that those planning 3 months of voluntary work in their gap year will be exempt from fees next year. But that's not enough, the colleges believe.
Behind me there are a lot of very competent professional people who explain matters particularly clearly, but it's quite certainly the case at the moment that we don't know precisely what the circumstances are.
The government should have foreseen the problem for this year's A-level students wanting a gap year, the opposition say.
What they've done is, first of all, describe this problem as irresponsible scaremongering. Then they've started briefing off the record that they will do something about it. But students who are going to get their A-level results on Thursday are entitled to know what the regime will be.
The government wasn't fielding anyone to answer charges of confusion today, indicating that a statement is likely on Thursday. But with John Prescott intervening in a row over immigration, not his usual brief, opposition taunts about who's really in charge while Tony Blair is on holiday are growing ever louder. Jackie Ashley, News at 10, Westminster.
Damon Hill's motor racing career was firmly back on track today after his brilliant drive for Arrows in the Hungarian Grand Prix yesterday. There's talk of him getting a job offer for next season from the McLaren or Jordan teams, or even Williams again. Here's our sports reporter Peter Staunton.
On the shop floor of the Arrows factory today, no time to reflect on a magnificent result. The next race is just 13 days away, and it's a circuit which is unlikely to give the team the advantage they enjoyed in Hungary. But while Arrows are at last getting the results, it may be too late to keep Damon Hill in the cockpit. The world champion should have won yesterday, but a sticking throttle left the car jammed in second gear. He was lucky that only Villeneuve was in a position to take advantage of his misfortune. With the team screaming their encouragement, Hill limped over the line. A crowd packed with German fans saluted the man who'd overtaken and outdriven their hero Schumacher. Damon had missed out on the big prize, but he'd almost lost everything.
It wouldn't change gear properly, and then the throttle went on the blink completely, and a few times the car just stopped almost completely. So I really was amazed we managed to get to the end.
But as the team's first real celebrations of the season began, Hill's search for a more competitive drive for 98 was continuing. The team owner today expecting the worst.
If he gets a big offer from Williams or McLaren, then obviously I'll understand that, and I wouldn't necessarily think agree with him that it'd be the right decision, but you know, I would understand that.
Maybe, just maybe, Tom Walkinshaw will be able to keep him. But if you're asking me, I think he'll move. Maybe to the McLaren, maybe to Jordan, maybe to Prost.
He came an unlucky second yesterday. Next season, Damon Hill aims to make a lot more visits to the podium. Peter Staunton, News at 10.
Coming up next on News at 10, more news including why the heatwave is putting smiles on the faces of holidaymakers and hoteliers alike. Could a single speck of DNA help scientists rebuild a criminal's face? Ian Wright on striking form as he thrills the Highbury crowd tonight. And 100 years on, is Enid Blyton just too posh for the 90s?
I say to those critics, you didn't know children in 1920, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. Do you know them in 90?